It started with a single casual comment that turned into a major incident rather than a news conference or a flashy social media announcement. The rookie sensation Caitlin Clark, who carried a whole league on her shoulders, said in passing that she would go to every road game, whether or not she was participating. It sounded like dedication to outsiders. It sounded like a warning to insiders. A flurry of inquiries was concealed beneath that silent sentence. Was she concealing a wound? Was she exhausted? Or was this the last sign that she was getting ready to leave forever? The response was swift and unforgiving. Whispers turned into conjecture in a matter of minutes. The sports media was dominated by a whirlwind of news and speculation. The WNBA's brightest star, Caitlin Clark, may be leaving the league. Fans were unable to comprehend it. Analysts examined each and every word. There were ideas, conspiracies, and frantic requests for clarification all across social media. Had Clark reached a breaking point, or was this just impatience exploding? A picture of a superstar at a crossroads was painted by the supposition, which grew louder the more silence that followed. Not just any superstar either. This was Caitlin Clark, who was perhaps the most influential rookie in WNBA history. She redefined what it meant to be a professional in her debut season. Athlete who threads improbable assists, crashes the boards with unrelenting energy, and averages almost 20 points each game. She was a force of nature, not just a player. Each match seemed like a showcase. Each item seemed like a piece of history being written. She was more than just a member of the league. Every step she took was changing it. Only a portion of the story was revealed by her numbers. After being dismissed as unimportant, Indiana Fever abruptly returned to the public's attention. The instant Clark on the court, years of mediocrity were erased. She guided them to the playoffs again, leading a team that had been overlooked in the national discourse. The Fever gained more than gains from her presence. She believed them. Fans flocked to arenas to watch Indiana play for the first time in almost 10 years, not out of allegiance, but rather out of pure admiration for what Caitlin Clark was accomplishing. Even more astounding to the globe, though, was how far her influence extended beyond the hardwood. Sales of tickets not only increased, but also surged. Week after week, arenas were sold out. The league never imagined that television ratings would reach new heights, and scalpers sold thousands of seats. A small product became a national spectacle thanks to Caitlin Clark. She was more than simply a basketball player overnight. She was the most significant person in women's sports, a magnet for attention, and the only person whose name could make both casual fans and corporate supporters take the WNBA seriously. Her ambiguous statement was alarming because of this. Because it wasn't just one athlete who had to make a decision. Caitlin Clark wouldn't only be abandoning her team if she departed. She would be abandoning the momentum of a whole league. Her fingerprints were on every sponsorship, every broadcast agreement, and every spike in item sales. The WNBA faced a terrifying prospect without Clark. The breakdown of everything it had constructed throughout the previous 12 months. Suddenly, the league's destiny depended on a single choice, and time was running out. Additionally, the fissures were already visible beneath the surface. Despite the glitz of crowded arenas and high viewership, Clark is not the type of star the WNBA system was designed for. Her earning potential was limited by its pay structure to slightly over $250,000, which is a small portion of the millions she made. She was bound by a contract that restricted her freedom and prevented her from fully realizing her value. By dismantling the system and revealing its flaws, she had become a prisoner of the very league she had brought back to life. The paradox was obvious. She was flooded with chances, sponsorships, and endorsements from businesses outside the league. Her name became a trademark. Her jersey is the sport's best-selling item. Her social media highlights are inevitable. However, she was constrained by antiquated salary limitations, outmoded contracts, and a WNBA that was too sluggish to change. It wasn't about ego for Clark. Value was at issue. How could she devote herself fully to a system that refused to reciprocate? With each day that went by, her cryptic comments became more profound, and her silence got heavier. Like a bright horizon, The prospect of playing abroad loomed. Top leagues in Europe, Asia, and Australia paid 2, 3, even 4 times greater. They provided benefits that the WNBA was never able to. Shorter seasons, housing, transportation, and less constant media attention. The attraction was irresistible for a superstar like Clark. Imagine getting compensated for her value. She was genuinely seen as the focal point and was free to perform without the oppressive burden of expectations. This was more than simply a bad situation for the WNBA. The fact that Clark's departure would involve more than just financial gain made it an existential danger. It would have to do with power. Her exit would indicate that the WNBA was unable to adequately reward or safeguard its most talented player. The idea that the league had finally arrived would be destroyed, revealing how flimsy its success actually was. It was an easy dread. Others could go if Caitlin Clark could. What is the WNBA without Caitlin Clark? Would be an inconceivable question for fans, sponsors, and networks, as the entire basis of women's basketball in America would shudder. The world therefore watched as Clark's career turned into a high-stakes wager and a struggle between liberation and loyalty. On the one hand, staying meant carrying the league on her back, inspiring others, and fighting for reform from inside. However, the dangers were oppressive. Poor compensation, constant pressure, and the arduous work of an organization that refuses to adapt. However, leaving meant financial recognition, freedom, and independence. However, it also meant giving up on the movement she had started, running the possibility of criticism, and perhaps becoming known as the person who left. She became more than just an athlete as a result of the decision's weight. She turned to become a symbol, a mirror reflecting the dire need for change and the unfulfilled promises of women's sports. Her motivations were examined in each article. Every broadcast made predictions about her future. All of the fan posts begged her to stay. There was more at stake than just a job. It was the legitimacy of a whole league. The anxiety increased as she remained silent, until it seemed as though the very destiny of Caitlin Clark's one sentence was crucial to the WNBA. Her influence outside of the court, however, kept expanding. Arenas that had previously been empty were filled by her presence. Sales of her jerseys topped national charts. In order to add their names to her brand, sponsors waited in line. She had become a cultural force that was too powerful to be confined within the WNBA's flimsy boundaries. Caitlin Clark was more than just a brand ambassador. She served as a spokesperson for women's basketball, and no league official, coach, or critic could regulate her in that capacity. Make use of leverage. She could use it as leverage in any direction. Remain. She would also call for reform. Depart, and she would make the world aware of the WNBA's shortcomings. In any case, she had permanently altered the power dynamics in professional women's basketball. Few athletes in history have risen to the point where their choices have an impact on sport, culture, and business. Caitlin Clark, however, was unique. She wasn't merely changing the course of history. The prisoner she was holding was just one decision away from blowing up all the league believed it had secured. And everyone was aware of it. Every game, every headline, and every rumor coming from behind the locker room doors increased the anxiety. Fans engaged in unending argument. Did she already have a heartbreak? Could a loser be tolerated by the league? Would she pursue the recognition she had gained abroad or remain faithful? There was an electrifying sense of uncertainty. A storm in the making. Her decision caused the appreciation for her talent to turn into despair. It seemed like each highlight reel may be her final one in the WNBA. Every cryptic remark is a hint of what will happen. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than words, the tension was purposefully and unbearably high. She remained at the focus of the discussion because Clark refused to clarify in order to defuse the situation. Perhaps that was the purpose. She became more and more influential every day. Her ratings were crucial to networks. Teams depended on her to sell tickets. She was essential to the league's relevance. She was now the WNBA's lifeblood. She posed the biggest threat to it, though. With just one choice, she might sink it or save it. She was also fully aware of her power. Her tale went beyond athletics. It went beyond a player's contract or a rookie's ascent. It dealt with leverage, legacy, and the prospects for women's sports. Caitlin Clark had taken center stage in a conflict that was far larger than herself. Whether she could change the WNBA was no longer the question. She had done so already. She had to decide whether to stay and complete what she had begun, or enter a new battlefield where the rules at last recognized her value. There were repercussions for both decisions. Either option promised to make a huge difference. And that is the current position of the story. On the edge of a knife, the blade in Caitlin Clark's hand. Her. The last message wasn't merely a comment. It served as a warning, a catalyst, and possibly the final hint prior to a momentous decision. The entire world is waiting. The fans hold on to optimism as the lead trembles. Since this is ultimately more than just Caitlin Clark's tale. This is the tale of a league struggling for relevance, a sport struggling for survival, and a superstar fighting for the freedom to choose her own path in life. Furthermore, the conclusion is still unwritten. However, history reveals one thing. It is uncommon for superstars to fade subtly. Choices have an impact much beyond the court when a player's reputation transcends a game and becomes more significant than the league. Caitlin Clark has become into more than just a rookie sensation. She has a worldwide reputation, a cultural figure, and a spark for discussions about power, equity, and women's basketball's future. Every door she opens may present a chance. Additionally, each door she shuts could cause ripple effects that change the WNBA's course for many years to come. That is the extent of her authority. Under closed doors, executives rush. When someone is in possession of the secrets to your league's survival, how do you approach negotiations? With every offshore contract promising more money, freedom, and respect, how can you persuade her to remain faithful? The Whisper report recommends late-night calls, emergency meetings, and ideas to keep her bound. However, the irony is clear. Caitlin Clark no longer requires the WNBA. She is needed by the WNBA. And every deal is skewed in her favor due to that power disparity. Each quiet is a negotiating chip,